Welcome all to my channel. So we're continuing on from our last video. I think I uploaded was when I put the rear axle in place, so the springs and axle etc in there. The only thing that I haven't done is to tighten up the bolts yet, but that'll be right at the very end when the vehicle is fully complete. So what I'll do is I'll talk about the fronts. I've done a couple of things since then, and one of them is to start putting in the relay. I've yet to tighten that in, but the other thing I did say I was going to do was to put the front springs on. So I've got the shackles in place on both sides, outer one being unthreaded, inner one being threaded, again just sitting there loosely. And what I want to do is I want to put the two springs on there, but only on the back, bolted up loosely on the back, so I have it hanging down. And then what I want to do is bring the diff over as is, put it on there, and then once it's all done and dusted, I'll bolt the fronts on, and I'll then continue working on the swivels. Now, one of the things I probably should mention with the relay, I did replace the seals both top and bottom, but with my original retaining collar, which is this thing over here, this is not the original, this one came out of the 109, and that one's in fairly good shape, as in this inner ring here, where it fits up against the relay, has to be as tight as possible. So this retaining ring here, or the collar, was the original one that came off here. And if I was to put that on there, you can see how I've lined up the holes to the threads. That's flogged out. There should not be that much movement, and you can see how there's grooves on that inner collar there. However, the one that I pulled out of the 109 is a nice tight fit, so that's what I'll be putting in its place. Now, coming back to the springs, I actually had the springs sent out to a Springworks place to get them reassembled, because I needed these new tabs over here, and I've got new bolts and spacers and so on, so all of that's ready to go. So I'll now prep the bolts, and I'll put the two ends on against the shackle here. Okay, so copious amounts of copper slip I put in there, but that's not required if you don't want to do that. You will notice that the shackle here, the lip, touches the lip of the bush. Okay, and on this side the same will apply, where that will touch the bush. So when that gets all torqued up, that'll create the friction there. So I'll just push that in and just put the nuts on there, and then we're ready to kind of leave that sitting there. So I'll do that for both sides. I should probably mention, I'll move this out of the way, that there is a left and right side to these springs. In my case, this has got a couple of extra leaves, hence it's thicker than what the left side is. So driver's side, thicker than the passenger side, and the same goes for the back leaves. The rear one here has a thicker leaf than the other side. Right, so we've got those there, nice loose in position. You can see nothing's really tight. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring the diff onto and position it onto the dowel pins. Right, so as I said, I position the diff on here, I realised after I put the diff onto the springs that there wasn't sufficient room, so I had to chock up the springs on both sides, and so that's why it's looking a bit funky like that. But anyway, we're kind of close. Now it's a matter of me making sure that they're sitting in its proper location, and then I'll look at putting the bottom plate and the U-bolts. But after a bit of toing and froing, I managed to get the fronts up here on the dumb irons. Diff is still sitting there without being supported. You can see there's no U-bolts or anything there. It's just sitting there for the moment. But yeah, it took a bit of fiddling to try to put that all in there, but I found by putting a jack on one side and then packing it up with a set of bricks and slowly moving it up close to this point here, then I finished it off with the jack. So that all kind of worked out quite well. You'll notice I haven't actually painted the leaves, both front and back. All I did was, after I cleaned them up, I just put a bit of anti-rust on the top, which gives it a kind of darkish colour that you can see here. I figure there's no point really in painting them because they're going to be exposed to, you know, vibration, dirt, heat, all that kind of stuff. So I figured I might as well just keep maintaining it with a rust preventative. Right, so ironically, when I talked about not painting the leaf springs because of all the stone chips and everything else, I did paint the bottom, this bottom support bracket here, way back early when I removed it. Anyway, it's done. But it's looking pretty good. All nice and secure in here. Now, I've just discovered something. These U-bolts are actually, the ones that I bought are for a 9-leaf spring. And of course the other side is a 11. It's an 11-leaf sprung. So it's from the 109. However, what that means is that the original U-bolts, or these ones here, are longer to allow for that. So if I put that up here, for example, you can see that there's enough for the plate and thread, whilst if I put that one there, you can see that it's actually going to have no thread at all. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to buy two longer ones. So I couldn't finish that job tonight, but anyway, everything else is looking pretty good. All in place. Always seems to be something with these projects. So a bit of a lesson for me is that when you're mixing and matching parts, you just got to make sure you order the bits that are suitable for the components that you're putting in. So in this case, I should have ordered one set for the 11 and the other set for the 9. But that's okay. You know, these things happen. Like I did stuff up with the brakes as well. You will see that in an earlier video. Lesson learned. But anyway. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll get another set of those, put them on, and we should pretty much be ready to start working on the swivels.